Welcome to Elite Rugby SandC podcast, the best podcast talking all things rugby and strength and conditioning. At Elite Rugby SandC, we provide athletes with strength and conditioning programs that provides you with everything you need to become a beast and take your game to the next level. No matter what stage of the year or season, Elite Rugby SandC has a program for you. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby SandC. Also, sign up to our newsletter and receive free bonus content each and every single week. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby SandC today. Today on the podcast, Coach Ben joins me for part 2 of Advice for Coaches. On this episode, we discuss getting out of your comfort zone, having a review process in place, having your own thoughts and processes as a coach, how to make yourself more valuable as a coach, and making sure you understand the language and terminology of your sport. Unfortunately, Ben's mic does stop working properly, hence the reason you hear a sound difference after the 15 minutes. We do apologize for this, but if you get over the sound, it's still an awesome episode. We hope you enjoy this episode, and we look forward to doing more Advice for Coaches episodes in the future. Enjoy! So, g'day, Ben. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Thank you, Kieran. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm going really well today as well. So today we're going to be talking about Advice for Coaches Part 2. I think Part 1 was quite good in sharing our thoughts about, random areas that we think can help coaches, and we're going to continue that trend today.
Yeah, talking about random areas, there's a couple of games of footy on this weekend, rugby, and a lot more next weekend. So excited. My couch and TV will get abused again.
Yeah, 100%. There's many great games from the Women's World Cup to the Spring Tour. And yeah, it's going to be exciting, and we will be reviewing the Wallabies versus Scotland next week as well. So hopefully we have some good things to say about that game as well, and hopefully it's not too many negatives or anything like that.
There's always positives that come out of football, mate. There's always learnings.
But I'd like it to be positive that because we won, and if it's negative because we won as well, not because we lost. So
I'm sure everyone's aiming to do that.
So first off the bat, we're going to talk about get out of your comfort zone and challenge yourself as an S&C coach. And this could look like getting your next qualification.
Yep.
So I think for me, it was something that, I know I got my level 1 and it was like, okay, cool. I was sort of stuck with that for a while. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to get the next one, and it was just something to, like the question says, get out of my comfort zone and challenge myself, because I think if I stayed with, say, a level 1 S&C coach and didn't really progress myself, I wouldn't have the opportunities, and I think you limit yourself if you don't push yourself to get to the next qualification, go to university, get your bachelor's, and now potentially get your master's as well. I don't want that to be the limiting factor for coaches on why they don't get their next opportunity.
Yeah, well, you think, what are you? You're a coach, so what is coaching about? It's
Coaching is about
improving
learning.
people. Yeah, imparting knowledge and improving people and getting them to the next level. So organizations want to see that you're trying to learn and get yourself to the next level. So you've got to go seek coaching if you want to be a coach.
100%. And then getting out of your comfort zone can also look like working with different sports. We can be pretty trapped in working with a sport that we're comfortable with, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I'm trying to say is branch out and try and learn from those different sports and learn from coaches in that sport and see if you can do something better, or see if you can add something to that sport as well.
Yeah, definitely. I really agree on that, because you'll find that generally there's a lot of crossover from an athletic performance, strength and conditioning point of view. Generally, you're trying to make really healthy, biomechanically well-functioning humans, and then you add, the differences for your sports, whether it's repairing because they've got exposed to repeated type of work in one area, so you've got to build up balance, or they've got more lateral, or they've got more horizontal force that they've got to produce versus vertical. So those little subtle differences, and particularly around energy system and running mechanics. So the more variety of sports you can go to, the better.
100%. And then from a business standpoint as well, if you do stuff outside of your main area of work, so you might work for a rugby team, but you have a couple of athletes from different sports wanting to work with you because they've seen some good stuff from you and heard some good stuff as well. And you're like, oh no, I only work with this sport, and if you can branch out and help those other athletes, because you might consider yourself a really good coach, and why wouldn't you want to work with different athletes and helping them achieve their goals and ambitions as well?
Yep, definitely. Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
And then another one is start a social media account and start posting content, challenge yourself to put yourself out there, because I think it allows you to then grow and learn a different area to coaching. It's like, well, how can I communicate my message more effectively to then get an audience, and you're then helping other coaches and athletes as well with quality content. Well, hopefully it's quality content, not misleading, but because there can be so many accounts and followings out there that is misleading and not really producing good content. And if you're not sort of trying to help fix the problem, then you're not really, you're not really doing the best that you can, I think, as a coach.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Probably where we work quite well, because I tend not to do too much social media, and myself, I'm a little bit older, where I I just don't have time for it and jump on it, and I sort of look at it and go, okay, whatever,
Mm,
for some of the accounts. But it's a world that people exist, and athletes are younger, and that's where they seek information. So I guess if you can drown out some of the poor content with and flood it with some better content, you definitely are making a difference. Yeah, I appreciate you actually doing that, because it's something that's out of my not comfort zone, but area of where I've looked after it. So
mm.
yeah, so and that's what you, if you're not comfortable with it, you might have to team up with someone that does enjoy it as well.
Yeah, and just reach out to another coach who you think does it quite well and ask what are some pointers I can do to then start producing content. You don't have to be consistent with the content if that's not your area that you're trying to, say grow a business. If it's just your personal coaching account and you just want to put out knowledge and put out some stuff that you're doing with your athletes, just go do it. Don't feel like you have to post every single day or every single week. Just post every now and again, reach out to other coaches, see what they're doing, and yeah, just post stuff that you think is relevant and sort of have a little bit of a following, but it doesn't have to be the biggest or anything like that. But I think that's a great way to challenge and get out of your comfort zone, put your stuff out there and see what other people think of it.
Yeah, and that's great. That's what you're asking your athletes. You're asking them to perform. So I
Mm,
guess that gives people a chance to get to know who you are and what you do, and you attract the people that want to work with you as well.
100%. And that sort of ties in nicely with the next one is present at a special interest group. So here in Australia, we have the ASCA, so the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, and in each state and territory, they have these groups where we meet up with S&C coaches, say every 6 to 8 weeks, and we have certain topics. And last Wednesday, myself and Ben presented, and that got us out of our comfort zone, and we're able to share what we're doing and from our experience and all that. And I think it's an awesome way to really get
Yeah.
yourself out of your comfort zone and challenge yourself, because a lot of people don't like public speaking. I asked a few people during last week, like, oh, I'm doing a presentation on Wednesday, and they're like, oh God, public speaking, I hate that. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of public speaking, to be honest, but it was really cool. It was good fun, and I thought I did a good job, even if I did a shit job, to be honest. It was still fun. I got to get out of my comfort zone and share something that I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, oh, I agree. I think as a coach, that's what you're doing. And talking about public speaking, when I present before gym sessions, I always have a couple of PowerPoints with the group there and presenting. It's when you're coaching, you're presenting all the time. You're imparting knowledge and you're getting understanding. So you should get really good and get comfortable with that. And the real thing is find who you are. Don't try and present the way other people do. Find something that you're comfortable with and the way that you want to present, because you don't have to be the best presenter. You have to be honest and authentic. And it's something that you need to do, because that's what you're doing to athletes all the time and in your job interviews and so forth. So it's a skill you definitely need.
That's a great point. It's find something that you think is quite interesting and see if you can create a, I don't know, 10, 15-minute presentation on it and then go out and present it, you know?
Yep, agree.
Hmm.
Good growth there.
But yeah, get out of your comfort zone and go challenge yourself. So the next one is, what are you doing in the strength and conditioning community to give back and help other coaches?
Yeah. Is that
I'm,
a
I'm,
question for everyone, or would you
yeah,
like?
it's a bit of both. I was hoping you would take the reins on this one, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I've been lucky and had a really good career, and been able to stay at organisations for a long period of time. I think when you're mentoring people, you want to actually contribute to their development. You want to actually get people around you. I've done that a lot of times where you take on people for hours, and then you give them internships. Then you actually give them an area to look after. I'm a big believer of, if you're mentoring people, you should give them something to look after, and they will own that area and do a really good job, rather than just token help. Um, how I want people to feel comfortable as a coach, and to find their way in what they want to do as a coach. So I think if you're a strength and conditioning coach or an athletic performance manager, you should be developing the staff, or whether it's volunteers or employees, in a way that they feel more comfortable and they get more challenges all the time. So that's what I think, and I really enjoy it. I think it's fantastic to do that, because you learn as much through that process as well. Because it sounds like you're dog sitting and the dog's barking a bit.
Yeah.
You learn as much because they ask questions why you're doing stuff, and then you work out what your justifications are and so forth as well. So the more people you have around, the better when you're actually trying to mentor. That's what I'm doing. What are you doing to help?
Yeah, so what I'm doing at the moment is helping this podcast and just turning off my mic when the dogs were just barking then. So yeah, I think mentoring's something that is probably one of the standouts on giving back to the S&C community, especially with up and coming coaches, because it can be quite daunting because you just sort of don't know how to coach and sort of get into the coaching industry, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, I'm doing this degree at university and they've asked me to go do some internship hours. What does it look like to actually be a coach or be an EP or be a physio as examples as well? So I think that's probably one of the best ones, and something that I've always strived to do since I've left university when I did my bachelor's was give back. And I think I've had around 8 interns, or yeah, I call them interns, or 8 times to be a mentor. And it's been awesome. It's been awesome to spend some time with these. So I'd always have two coaches. Say, for instance, at my last role in rugby was I'd always have two interns with me. And it was really cool to get to know them and then slowly see how they progress, challenge them, give them all these resources, and really try to set them up for a good coaching career. Some of them have gone into EP, and I think they've been better off because they've understand how to coach, and now they can go apply that to special populations. And yeah, it's just been awesome because when they first come to do the internship, we do a what's it called, an interview process. And one of the things is, can you write down a warm up? And I haven't had one intern yet nail the warm up. There's been some good attempts, but they've just gotten so nervous and like, oh no, what do I do? And yeah, it's been pretty funny to witness that. And then when we review that at the end of the internship, they nail it. They understand those basic elements. They understand how to coach, and most of the times towards the back end, I really don't have to tell them much because they're just out there doing it by themselves, and it's really awesome to see. So I would say that would be the biggest area, would be being a mentor to other coaches. Another area that I think we're giving back in the S&C community is doing this podcast. We're giving out some pretty good information that has been trialed and tested, and from yourself has been at the high level as well. So I think something like this is a great way. You might not like yourself in terms of your voice being on a podcast if it's not your thing, but you just get over it. Yeah, you just get over it, and if it's something that you want to do, go do it. Do something to give back to the community, because I wouldn't be in this position I am without other coaches giving up their time and effort with me.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about that. A good mate has been on the podcast. Actually, coached at Super Rugby level now, and he's in charge of an academy. It sort of inherited him as through an internship. We gave him a challenge of writing a program, like a strength program for a certain period of time, and he took so long the first one ever to do it. And it's now when we catch up occasionally, we have a little laugh about it. That he can write programs really quickly, but for him, it was to work out a justification process and a filtering process on why things were in there and what they were trying to achieve. So similar to your warm up, it was quite funny. And another story, Johnny Mitchell, he's a great guy. He gave one of the guys that he worked with a challenge. He hadn't had too much real coaching before, to come up with a warm up, and it took him forever. Johnny laughed and giggled. So when I started working with Johnny, he'd give you a warning like 3 minutes before you're about to do a warm up. He'd like to put you under that pressure. I just laughed at it. I've been doing this for 20 years, no problem, whatever. But that's sort of the little nudging pressure that people will put on you, and you should be able. These things should roll off you. You should be able to do them like a tradesman turning up for a job at a house. They should know all the little tips and tricks to get that job started straight away.
100%. And little tips out there. If, say, for instance, I'm hiring you or Ben's hiring you, just be ready to write a warm up or write a program in a short amount of time. So just be ready.
And if you can't, we'll help you out and get you there so that you feel comfortable.
So the next one is, you need to do a review process in place. Oh, sorry, a review process needs to be in place in your SandC program. Something that I'll get you to talk about.
Yeah. So, and this is something I started doing. And everyone should do this. It started probably back in club in the late 90s. And the reason for this was it was a grand final that we were playing, and the forward pack had massive amounts of cramps in that game. And there was a training session on the Thursday night, and they got carried away doing scrums for like 45 minutes. And I tried to intervene and stop it and so forth, because I just thought it would, and that's how worried they were about the scrum. They created some problems because they hadn't done that type of volume before. And then again, in the warm up for the grand final, they'd emphasised a lot of scrums. So, and that probably came from the coaches who were going, they're not fit enough. Look at them going down with cramps. It's like, yeah, you've cooked their calves, guys. And then I thought, okay, what I have to do as I go along is always review training sessions, then review weeks, then the month, and so forth. And then you eventually just break it down into reviewing periods of time, like the first block of your preseason, the second block, first half of your season, second half of your season, and your finals. And the reason for that is to take the lessons, that good and bad, from that and improve the next block. And eventually, at the end of the year, you're trying to improve your next season. And it's a good way of actually reflecting and reviewing the work you've done and the influence you have had. And if you haven't had an influence on changing things as well, and a way for you to identify things sometimes outside of your control, like planning, scheduling, policies, bits of equipment or systems that you want to purchase, things like that. So it gives you more weight if you can get some objective data to that. And if you can link that to other people's views, it becomes really, really powerful. And then if you're writing programs, you've got this information and justifications, and you start using that hindsight as foresight when you're actually developing next programs.
No, I love that. And it's something that probably really isn't talked about that much, is having a review process, especially if you're starting out as a coach and say you're in a role where you're the head coach for just an amateur team, head SandC coach, and you're just doing the season, and it probably hasn't been talked about. And I know from first-hand experience, so I think it was my second year, and I was having a meeting with the president to increase my salary for the next season, and some other things as well. And I had a review process in place. Like I had some really good points of why I should be increase my salary and all that, but I never really had that objective data or was able to present it and communicate it in a way to make me more valuable to the organization and to really state what I did well during the season and how that reflected on the season as well. And it just came out as the president sort of didn't want to give me that salary increase and was really questioning why, and had a mass like a shield up as well to sort of protect the club in terms of not giving me a pay raise. And I just felt really shitty after that. I was like, damn, I really should have prepared for this meeting a lot better. And if I had have done a more in-depth review process, I could have left this meeting feeling a lot more confident about myself, and I would have got the pay raise that I thought was reasonable, not the one that I was like, okay, type thing as well. And there was a bit of bad blood at the end of it because but it was more for me because I didn't communicate that better. So I think if I could have my time back, I would really spend some time on during the season, after each phase of the season, then after the season, and reviewing what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, and then summarizing that and then presenting it to the higher up people in the organization.
Yeah, and that's always a big component in the business world, in the professional world. That's what you're doing. You're reviewing quarters or periods of times and so forth. So, and justification for work output or why things weren't successful and what you might need to achieve that. Or if the resources aren't given, well, you can't promise results. So, what would they like to identify as their key goal? Because without certain resources, you can't get the goal that they want. And it finds out. I used to say, are you serious about winning a grand final, or are we just talking about it? So are we investing in trying to win it, or do you just want people to, is it just something you get saying so that people think that you want it? Like there's a big difference. Putting that nice pressure on, but also being honest and holding yourself accountable when you do good and bad things, but also holding the fellow coaching staff accountable, because we all have peaks and troughs in sort of energy and focus. So we should be able to note that when that has happened between us as well.
100%. So the next one, you need to have your own thoughts and processes when being an S&C coach. And what I mean by that is you need to have your sort of own unique way around programming. And I feel like there's a certain, I'm not going to name names, I won't name names on this one, but I feel like there's a certain thing going on where people are just sort of trying to be the best copycat and they don't actually have an original thought or idea around the programming. Obviously, if you'll learn from a coach and that coach has been very successful, awesome, try and use that, but add in your own spice and herbs, add in your 7 secret recipes, like KFC. So I think you really need to have your own thoughts and processes around it and make it unique to yourself. And that's something that I would say I have in place for myself. I've learned a lot from yourself and other coaches as well, but I still have my way of programming, and I think it's working quite successfully. I'll never just see a type of programming or system and just implement it straight away and not sort of question it or add my own little things into it as well. And me and you would both disagree on certain exercises or programming stuff.
Yeah,
still
definitely.
to this day, but I think that makes us better and we really challenge ourselves instead of just agreeing and saying, yep, that's the way that we're going to do it. So what's your thoughts about that, on having your own thoughts and processes as an S&C coach?
Yeah, absolutely fundamental. And I'll talk about, to say, I've always enjoyed trying to win grand finals or get people to the highest level possible. Once you go above 32 players in a season, you're not going to win a grand final. So that gets you to think about, well, how do we win? Availability. So availability is pretty good, but availability plus dominance in your position and able to train all week. So when you start going down that process, and I think we've talked about coaching philosophy, so I might jump in and quickly say mine is to give the head coach a positive headache by making every player available for every game and training session with the physical capabilities to dominate their position. So that's how all my programming and ideas and planning and how I create my training methodology all stems from that main area. Does it fall under that? If it's falling under fashion or trend, okay, or is there something going wrong where my criteria isn't being met? I haven't got a high availability. They're not dominating their positions against their opposition, and they're not getting to every training session and game. Well, there's a problem where I have to adjust the way that I'm doing things. So I think it's absolutely fundamental that and it gives you great confidence when you're filtering in how you adjust and change and what programming you do.
100%. And what I got that from what you just said there would sort of come back to something we talk about a lot is doing the basics. If you've got this your coaching philosophy and you've got a unique style of how you're going to program, just remember to keep it basic and tick off all those boxes, and not just, like I said, don't be the best copycat of another program, because you probably won't be able to copy it that well, and I don't think you're going to get the best out of the program and the best out of your athletes and the team.
Yeah, and it's not just seeing an exercise and repeating it, it's knowing the absolute intent that they're trying to get, what facet of training they're adding to it, what problem that they're trying to solve, and what's the intent, what is good intent or outcome of execution of that exercise. That should be how you filter it in, not just, oh, wow, that club's doing it, they're winning, I'll do it. You've got to have a more intellectual and a greater logical and justifying process before you start adding things, and also be willing to change. A lot of the time I've challenged myself to actually completely program differently each year, A, to keep the guys stimulated, and B, just to prove that sometimes what I think is success isn't success. So just absolutely to mix it up, to try and get out of my comfort zone as well.
Hi everyone, we just wanted to take a break from this episode. We hope you are enjoying this episode so far, and also all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby SandC newsletter today. We provide you free, exclusive content each and every single week to our subscribers. Link in the bio. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on social media to all your friends and families. So thanks again for your support, and now back to the episode.
As well.
100%. And sport is so challenging, especially at the highest levels, because if you were to replicate what you did last season to this season, it's probably not going to work. And
no, you're behind.
You just got to find those areas that you can improve, which goes back to our review process. Is there some strengths that we're going to continue to work on, but what are those weaknesses we're also going to identify and bring some new things in, bring in those new ideas that you've been seeing pop up, in research and from other high performing S&C coaches. Like, bring that into your program, but don't just, throw everything out, but just slowly sprinkle it back into your program and see if it's going to work. And you don't want to be stagnant. You don't just want to be putting out the same product every single year. You want to slowly improve the product and see what can be made better.
Yeah, and a lot of the time I challenge myself to throw things out, as in how can one exercise cover 2 to 3 things, rather than going, I'm going to have an exercise to cover this area, that area, and that area. What's something that can combine that covers them, or those 3 things that I need well, so that all of a sudden I've taken some training load out that can be added to the on-field load, or skills, or technical or tactical. That's a much better outcome.
And an example of that, which pops into my head, which we've talked about, is, let's say we're doing some single leg work in the gym, doing our step ups or Bulgarians or some form of lunge. If we're doing that really, really well and got the right appropriate amount of sets and reps, we really don't need to be spending some time on, say, a Copenhagen, really targeting those adductors, because we're already getting that stimulus in the gym. And then if you're doing proper change of direction work on the field, you're ticking the box off. So you don't want to have to waste time on an exercise that is really not really going to benefit you anymore, because you're already getting enough stimulus from the gym and the field.
I think you've absolutely chosen a really good example there. Thinking from in a rehab setting when someone's rehabbing, great, but once they get back up to that, you want co-contraction of that whole hip, like the glute med and the adductor and the hamstring all firing in the right sequence and the right way to do that. The overemphasis of maybe doing a Copenhagen might not be right because you're actually adding too much load and you can add some groin stuff. And there's a great story from Johnny Nitzel again, talked about how with the Aussie Sevens, he started bringing in a whole lot of Copenhagens and stuff, had their worst year for groin problems. And he mentioned this when we were coming back from COVID, because the guys had done a lot of linear running and they hadn't come back and done a lot of change of direction, the skills and so forth, the intensity was up. And the physio said, oh, we need to add in more groin squeezing, that type of stuff. And Johnny went, no, like club football, it'll settle down pretty quickly. So, yeah, I think you've got a really good example there. And just if they're not experiencing groin pain or it's an issue, you don't need to add something that's not a problem.
Yeah, and I've seen that quite a few times as well, and that sort of ties back into my copycat sort of comment before. Like, just because you see a certain organization or team doing it doesn't really mean you have to put that exercise in, because you might be supplementing that one for something else that you could have done, or just not doing it at all because you didn't need to do it because you're getting it enough stimulus already.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a really good example.
So next one, make yourself more valuable to the team and organization. And I'm going to talk about sort of the elite. Sorry, not the elite. That's you. That's going to be you. I'm going to talk more about the amateur. Sorry. So the amateur level and just my experience. So with the previous organization that I was with, so the rugby team, I learnt how to strap. You know, there was a sort of a need for it because the physio only started their contract at a certain time and there wasn't anyone to strap. So during my university time, I became a sports trainer. So I was learning. I learned how to strap and then became really good at it. I'll toot my own horn. I'm pretty damn good at strapping. You know, ankles, shoulders, elbows. I'm pretty damn good at it. Knees, I'm not too bad. But it added more value to myself, but also to the organization. So I think doing something like that can be really cool because it also allowed me to get on the field a bit more on game day because I was a sports trainer. So which meaning if someone goes down, I can just run out there, you know, with the water as well. So it's just a little trick around getting some more water out there. And which also allowed me to then deliver the messages a bit more effectively from the head coach through the walkie-talkie as well. So I think little things like that, can you make yourself more valuable, can be an awesome way. And the last one before I give it over to you, Ben, is can you also help out some teams outside of your current playing group? So I was helping the senior teams, and then I reached out to the 18s as well, and the 18s reached out to me. It was very mutual, and was wondering if I can help them in the spare time that I had during training, because they trained at the same time as us. Can I come over there and do some conditioning work and some speed work, you know? And that allowed me to build another connection with another coach who eventually came on to the coaching team the following year. And it also allowed me to work with some up and coming athletes in the 18s who were the cult players for next year. So I think you're only going to add value to yourself if you do reach out. Obviously, don't reach out if you just got way too much on your plate, but see if you can, and because I think that's going to add more value to yourself, and potentially you could get a pay rise in that area because you say, yeah, I'm going to help out the 18s next year as well. Can you give me a pay rise for that? And it's only going to benefit everyone, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about. I remember doing sports trainer stuff and doing some strapping. I quickly got out of it because we was so busy on the demands of the place where I first started, probably having a gym and all of that type of stuff. I couldn't afford time strapping, but it was good to understand that process and doing the injury assessment on field. I think that's fantastic. Probably to answer the question from the elite end, the rehab process is a complicated, hard process. So understanding the contact return in rugby league and union is really important. So understanding how contact coaches, tackle coaches, or collision coaches, depending on where you are, what they're called, and their outcome. So you can actually be that bridge between, say, the physio early stage, SNC, sort of late stage and then the contact stage. So being able to coach contact in a controlled, safe manner, returning people from injuries, is a massive part of an organization, because the skills coaches don't have time to do that. And a lot of the normal S&C coaches and physios aren't trained in that. So that would be and it's absolutely necessary. If you do that, you can make yourself really valuable for an organization in a contact sport.
No, I love that point, because it's something that it just reminds me of a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now, when one of the Brumbies 19s boys was just coming back and doing some extra work on his shoulder. And on his right side, awesome. Technique was there. When he went to his left side, he wasn't getting his left leg close to the person. He was sort of squaring up and then hitting. And with my knowledge from learning from the rugby coaches and my own experience playing rugby and remembering, okay, what is our tackle technique and what do we want to replicate from shoulder to shoulder in terms of tackling? And I could identify that. And I told him that, and he didn't know that. He didn't realize he was doing that. So we worked on it, and then he just became natural as well. So it just reminds me of that. Like, if you can understand that the terminology and the coaching that they're trying to do from your contact coach, you can make yourself really valuable, because there's only so much a physio does know and an S&C coach does know in that space. So if you can learn more about it, it's going to make yourself more valuable. And just another experience for me was, I remember the physio was doing stuff with them. This was a few years back, in terms of the rehab and return to contact, and it just didn't make sense why they were doing it like that. So that they've got a program for another organization and they're using that. And I was questioning, okay, why are we doing that? Because they're not really going to be doing that in a game, and even when you scale it back, it's not really teaching them the correct way of how to do contact again. So you can really start to question that return to contact program and make sure it is specific and is really going to return them back to train, but then also back to perform as well. So I think it's given me a better coaching eye when I'm just watching or taking a return to contact session, and I can really make sure that I'm giving the best service possible to that athlete coming back from an injury.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's your experience in playing and coaching as well. So
I think that point from you ties in perfectly to the next one, which is you got to understand the language and the terminology of the sport that you're in, because it's only going to make you better as a coach, and it allows you to understand what your players and coaches are saying, because sometimes you can just be like, what are they saying? I don't really understand what you mean by that sentence. And if you can do your homework and really and ask questions as well, ask the player, what do you mean by, you're taking the ball into contact and the person's trying to jackal you, like what does that term mean? And once you start to understand it and all that, you can really start to build a better connection with your teammates and coaches as well. And then you can understand, how can I how can you sorry, I just lost my train of thought because Ben did something just then. But it's then allowing you to program your S&C program better, and then you might find areas that you can help the head coach with when coaching as well. Like what are some things that you can add into your program, to make it better, so yeah.
Yep. Sorry, for some reason my audio jumped there, but yeah, the language is really important, because if you're setting up even conditioning drills, speed drills, and just say your team might have first 3 steps, they might have wording for that. Then you start doing that in your speed drills. In your conditioning drills, if they might have a terminology for getting off the ground, like bounce or something like that, you're actually using that in your conditioning. So what you're trying to embed is trying to embed into the athlete as well. And overall, everyone's speaking the same language. It's fundamental. It is absolutely key. And I guess if you're in a, say, professional team versus, say, academies and so forth, if you're the S&C coach, you're there for all field sessions, all gym sessions, all skills, all meetings and so forth. if you're in a, say, more amateur setting or an academy session, you're usually only there for the gym or that type of stuff. You should get to the field so that you bring that language back to that gym environment as well. So everyone should be connected. So, and that'll make a massive difference, because then you get more coaching responsibilities on the field, not just the gym. And that's how you make yourself hugely valuable. You're not some gym nerd that doesn't know about the skills, doesn't know about the organization. They don't last long at all.
100%. And there might be situations where you need to, say, for the people who aren't in the match day 23, and you need to take them through conditioning sessions and potentially some skill sessions and contact as well, that the coach feels comfortable leaving you with that responsibility. There's been multiple times when I've had to do that. For instance, I remember the first Super W season with the Brumbies girls. Like, I took I think it was 6 or 7 of them for a running session, but we also did some skills and we also did some contact as well. And all I was doing was just reiterating the coaching standards that was taught from the coach, and I was just reiterating that and then doing the same drills, same intent, and using the same terminology. And the girls got did a really good session and got a lot out of it. And it only makes you more valuable as a coach.
Yeah, in the elite setting too, if guys are touring overseas and stuff, all the coaching staff go. There's many times when I was the only staff member left back and maybe a physio, and you'd be doing all their strength, all the conditioning, all their skills work, everything through that week for when they get back, and that they want you to be able to do that. They might get an academy coach to help, but a lot of the time things clash. And you're, as the S&C coach, you're actually doing a lot of that, and they prefer it if you're comfortable doing that and you've learned to understand the language and develop the skills and giving the feedback the same way as the coaches. So if you do that, you all of a sudden you're a very, very valuable asset to an organization.
So we did run into some technical difficulties just then. So unfortunately, I can't say goodbye to Ben on this episode. But thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone for listening. This has been an awesome episode, and I know everyone will get something out of it. Thanks, team. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to Come a Beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, remember to sign up to our newsletter to receive free bonus content each and every single week. So don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level. Thanks for listening.